Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentour and yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, guys, yesterday Delta CEO came out with a surprise announcement that Delta is going to pre-retire their whole Boeing 777 fleet by the end of the year. What does this say about Delta and what does this say about the American airline industry at the moment? Stay tuned.
Wind 31016, everyone right, set on. Third one and 31 right. Delta 260.
So Delta traditionally is one of the stronger players in the American airline industry. They have had slightly different approaches from the other majors, and that they started off by buying quite a lot of older aircraft types and been operating older aircraft type much longer than most of the other airlines. But by doing so, it meant that they've spent less money on buying new aircraft and been able to actually be quite successful with that strategy. Now that strategy has changed lately, where they've started a big modernization of their fleet, and they have gone in and they bought Airbus 330-900 Neos, which are very efficient, as well as the hyper efficient Airbus A350. But the fact that they went out yesterday and said that they're actually going to completely retire their 18 777 came as a bit of a surprise anyway. Because during the last year or so, they've actually done a huge renovation of their Boeing 777 fleet. Now, the Boeing 777 has been used on their, ultra long haul flights, so the likes of, for example, Los Angeles to Sydney. And this renovation would have indicated that Delta was originally planning to keep these aircraft flying for many, many years to come. Now, obviously, with this ongoing crisis in the aviation industry, all bets are off, and all of the airlines will have to find ways to adapt to the current market environment. And that market environment is not very good, guys. In the beginning of the year, there was about 2.3 million people flying out of the United States. As this crisis came on, it dropped down to just under 100,000. That's an enormous drop. Now, it should be said that lately it looks like the market is starting to pick up a little bit. There's some more passengers flying, but still around 200,000 or so, which is still about a 90% drop. And remember, in order to be able to fly an aircraft with a little bit of profit, you need to have a load factor up around 80%, so 75 to 80%. Above that, you can potentially start making some profits as well. But the older your aircraft is, the more maintenance it needs, the more fuel it uses, the less efficient it is, the higher load factor you are going to need in order to fly effectively. So, when you see CEOs coming out with news like this, that they are going to be pre-retiring fleets, they also said that they are going to retire their MD-88s and MD-90s by June. Now, Delta, just as to give you an example of their fleet age, I think they were among the only airline in the world still operating the MD-90. So that is a perfectly logical step to take, and something that they probably would have done anyway. But the 777, that shows a little bit on how they are adapting to this new reality. It's obvious that the airline executives over in the United States have realized that it's likely that it's going to be the domestic market and the short to medium haul market that is going to rebound first, that's going to come out of this crisis first, and that's where the money is going to be made. And that it will take a while before they start to get the numbers up on the long-haul flights. And a very logical step then is to look very, very carefully at your long-haul fleet. Because the long-haul fleet, that's where you can lose a lot of money if you're not careful. So if you compare an Airbus 350 to their old Boeing 777s, the Airbus will use about 21% less fuel per passenger. So this means effectively that you can fly the Airbus 350 with less people on board for the same ticket prices and still make money than you can on the Boeing 777. And that is obviously a crucial thing to think about when you hear about aircraft retirements. Now, is this a sign of weakness or is this a sign of strength then? Well, the way that I choose to see it is that when an airline is facing a major crisis, the speed of how they adapt to that crisis is going to be crucial for how effective they are going to be and how big their chances are of surviving. So an airline that goes in and very quickly realizes that the kind of cash burn that Delta has been experiencing during the last few weeks, which is about, they're burning through about $50 million per day, cannot be sustained. That has to be stopped. So they've simply gone down, sat down together and decided, how do we stem this hemorrhaging of cash? And that's what they've done. So I see it as a sign of strength from a company point of view. It is obviously going to hurt the pilots, the cabin crew, everyone working around there. But if you look at it from the perspective of trying to save the airline and trying to save as many jobs as possible, this is probably the way to go down. Remember that their Airbus 350 fleet and the Airbus 330-900 fleet is actually much bigger than the 777. So they only have about 18 777, and I think they have about 26 Airbus 350 on order and the region of 32 Airbus 330 on order and delivered. I don't know exactly how many of each, how many they have delivered and how many they have on order, but it's definitely an increase of fleet size on that side. However, we don't know if they're going to take all of those orders. That remains to be seen. But what they're doing, in my view, is a sign of strength. Okay, I think that they have to do this. Now, on the pilot side, what they've also said is that it's likely that in 2021 there will be about 2,500 to 3,500 too many pilots in the company, and that obviously is very, very bad news, both for people in the airline, but for the entire business as well. What you should be thinking though, because there is always a bit of a light in the tunnel here, is that if you look at, for example, American Airlines, they are facing exactly the same kind of problems as Delta are, and they have already started to prepare for a downsize in personnel. And the way that they've done that is they have asked their pilots and cabin crew to go on voluntary unpaid leave or voluntary furlough or leave of absence, depending on what you want to call it, and pre-retirement. Remember in my videos that I've done during the last few weeks that I've talked about the baby booming generation and how a lot of pilots were due to leave the market anyway within the next coming 2-3 years? Well, that's pretty much what we're seeing in American Airlines. When they went out and they asked people if they wanted to pre-retire, then they've gotten a very strong response. And thousands of pilots have actually taken that up and said, listen, I'm not going to continue with this. I'm just going to take this deal and I'm going to go into retirement now and I'm going to enjoy it. And hopefully that is what we will see in all of the majors that needs to downsize right now. So that instead of having to fire people who want to continue to fly, you'll see a lot of pilots who would be leaving the workplace anyway, taking up pre-retirement deals. And then as the market starts picking up in 2022, 2023 or so, then the whole machinery will start churning again. And all of you guys who are training right now and have 2 years of training ahead of you should be able to get into the machinery again and start pumping. All right, that's at least what I think will happen, and I really, really hope that I am right on this. Okay, but for Boeing, this is not great news. Delta was actually one of the airlines that helped design the Boeing 777 when it was designed back in the 1990s, and the fact that Delta is now turning away from the 777 in favor of Airbus is a hard blow. I do think, however, that the 777X, which is a fantastic looking aircraft that Boeing is producing right now, is still going to have a bright future. It is a very, very efficient aircraft. It is exactly the right size. So right now it's looking very dark, but I think that when we start to get this under control and we see where this is heading, the 777X should still have a fairly bright future ahead of it. But it all depends on where this crisis is going. So I know that this is all bad news that you're hearing right now. I know that it can be sometimes really, really hard to deal with. And this is why I have created a video that will give you some guidance in how you should be thinking in order to get through this slump in as positive and a constructive way as possible. So I will be releasing that video very soon. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you look through the whole video there, because there are going to be 4 different things that I need you guys to think about that will help you. It doesn't matter if you're in the aviation industry or any other industry. It goes for every one of us, including me, for how we are supposed to look at this situation right now. And if you like videos like this, I highly recommend you to get into my Mentour Aviation app. Okay, it's completely free to download. You have the links here, or I think up here. In the app, I have 4 brilliant administrators that's helping me to find aviation news from all over the world and uploading them. Some of them are going to be pushed out to you. And by the way, guys, if you have the app and you don't want as many push notifications, well, then you can go into settings and set up how you want your push notifications. It's no problem whatsoever. But you can also come in, you can talk to me, you can talk to other aviators, people who are afraid of flying, you can talk about technical stuff, or you can watch my 360 instructional videos on how to set up the Boeing 737. So see you inside of the app, and yeah, stay tuned for my motivational video that's coming on later on. Bye. Right guys, I really hope that you liked that. If you want more content like that, more aviation content, well then check this out. I hope that you have subscribed to the channel and that you've highlighted the little notification bell. See you inside of the Mentour Aviation app, and have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye bye.